Imagine waking up knowing that tonight, at exactly 6 p.m., you are going to die. Not from an accident, not from illness. The state has scheduled your death. The needle is ready. The witnesses are already on their way. And here's the thing. You already cheated death once. 20 years earlier, this man walked out of one of the most secure jails in Texas wearing a fake badge and civilian clothes, caught a freight train into the night, and slept under the stars. He called it an adventure. He was the only death row inmate in 21st century America to successfully escape custody. But on January 28, 2026, there was no escaping this. His name was Charles Victor Thompson, and this is the story of his crime, his extraordinary escape, and his final 24 hours on Earth. Stay with me, because this story doesn't go where you think it. April 29th, 1998, Houston, Texas. A quiet apartment complex in the suburb of Tomball. Dennis Hayslip had recently ended a relationship with a man named Charles Thompson. Her teenage son, Wade, had noticed Thompson's behavior getting worse over time. The rage, the control, the violence. Dennis made the brave decision to leave him and move on. She started dating a man named Darren Keith Kane, 30 years old. Thompson could not accept it. Darren eventually confronted Thompson directly. The two men fought and Thompson lost. A deputy arrived and found them outside Denise's apartment, apparently calm, sharing a beer. Thompson told the officer he had made peace with the situation. He accepted that Dennis wanted to be with Darren. The deputy believed him and let Thompson leave. That was a mistake. 3 hours later, Thompson returned with a gun. He kicked in the apartment door. He shot Darren Kane twice in the chest. As Kane turned to flee, Thompson shot him once more in the back. Kane fell to the floor, and Thompson pressed the gun to the back of his head and executed him right there. Dennis Hayslip was also shot. She was airlifted to the hospital. She survived the night, but 1 week later, she died from her injuries. 2 people gone because a man could not handle being left. Wade Hayslip, Denise's teenage son, was pulled from class by his vice principal and his youth pastor. Before they could even say who had shot his mother, Wade looked at them and said, "It was Chuck, wasn't it?" He already knew. But the story gets darker. After his arrest, Thompson didn't just confess, he tried to have the only witness who could connect him to the murders killed. From inside his jail cell, he reached out to arrange a hit on a woman named Diane Zernia. Law enforcement was tipped off. They sent an undercover investigator wearing a wire to pose as the hired killer. On tape, Thompson said plainly, "She's the only witness they got. It's more important to kill her than to get the gun back." That recording and that undercover operation became so famous, it later inspired the 2024 Netflix film Hitman, starring Glenn Powell. In 1999, Charles Victor Thompson was sentenced to death. Thompson's first death sentence was overturned on appeal in 2001 due to a Sixth Amendment violation. He was retried, and in November 2005, he was sentenced to death. And then, before he could even be transferred back to death row, he disappeared. On November 3, 2005, Thompson was brought to a visitor's room at the Harris County Jail, supposedly for a meeting with his attorney. Inside the legal binder, he was allowed to carry a handcuff key, a fake ID badge crafted from his prison ID, a set of civilian clothes, khaki pants, a dark blue shirt, white tennis shoes. Once alone, he slipped off his cuff, changed out of his jumpsuit, and walked out. He waved his fake badge at deputies in the hallway. Nobody stopped him. He strolled through the front door of one of the most secure jail systems in Texas, like he owned the place. What followed was 3 days of freedom. Thompson caught a freight train heading east. He sat in an open boxcar, watching the landscape roll by, feeling the wind on his face. He later told the Associated Press, "I got to smell the trees, feel the wind in my hair, grass under my feet, see the stars at night. It took me straight back to childhood." He made it all the way to Shreveport, Louisiana. He stole a bicycle. He posed as a Hurricane Katrina evacuee to get money from strangers. For 72 hours, he was a ghost. But on November 6th, police received a tip. They found him outside a liquor store, intoxicated, trying to wire money overseas for a flight to Canada. It was over. He was extradited to Texas, charged for the escape, and placed on death row at the Pulaski unit in Livingston, this time under maximum restriction. He became a legend in the criminal justice world, the only death row inmate in modern American history to pull it off. Over the next 2 decades, he became something of a celebrity. He was featured in documentaries. He had hundreds of pen pals from around the world, many of them organized in a fan group run from Wales. He maintained his innocence on the murder charge, not the escape, which he admitted freely, and built a small but vocal following of supporters who believed his trial had been unfair. But the courts were not moved. His appeal ran out. And in late 2025, the state of Texas set a date, January 28th, 2026, January 27th, 2026. Livingston, Texas. Charles Victor Thompson woke up in his cell at the Polunsky unit. The same concrete walls, the same solitary silence he had lived with for over 2 decades. But today, everything was different. His legal team had filed a final appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. The Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles had already denied clemency. There were no more doors left to knock on, just the one at the end of the hallway. He spent the morning writing. He had always written letters to supporters, essays, appeals. It was how he survived 2 decades of isolation. That morning, he ate his last breakfast: scrambled eggs, grape jelly, oatmeal, applesauce, biscuit. The kind of meal that sounds ordinary until you realize it's the last one. At some point during those final hours, he was transferred from Polunsky to the Huntsville unit, the place where Texas has carried out every one of its executions since 1924. The drive is about an hour through flat East Texas landscape, pine trees, silent. Some inmates say it's the longest ride of their lives. In Huntsville, the witnesses were gathering. On one side of the glass, law enforcement, the district attorney's office. On the other side, the families, the people who had been waiting 28 years for this moment. Wade Hayslip was there. He had spent nearly 3 decades carrying the weight of that morning, being pulled from class, losing his mother, watching Thompson work the system, escape, come back, appeal, appeal, appeal. Months earlier, Wade had said, "I'm just looking for accountability, and the only thing he has to offer me at this juncture is his life." Darren Kane's parents, Dennis and Valerie, were also there, in their 80s now, still waiting. At 5 p.m., 1 hour before the scheduled execution, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a brief order. No explanation, no stay. The final door closed. 6 p.m., January 28, 2026. Thompson was strapped to the gurney inside the execution chamber. The white room, the fluorescent light, the needle already in his arm. He looked through the glass at the witnesses, and he spoke. "I hope the victim's family, their extended family, and their loved ones can find forgiveness in their heart, and that you can begin to heal and move past this. There are no winners in this situation. It creates more victims and traumatizes more people 28 years later." He paused. "I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry for what happened. Keep Jesus in your life. Keep Jesus first." The injection began. He took a series of breaths that slowed, deepened, and faded into silence. At 6:50 p.m., Charles Victor Thompson was pronounced dead. The first execution carried out in the United States in 2026. Outside the facility, Dennis Kane, Darren's father, looked at reporters. He said 4 words, "He's in hell now." And Wade Hayslip, the boy who had known it was Chuck before anyone even said his name, spoke quietly to the cameras. "It's the end of a chapter and the beginning of a new one. I'm looking forward to the new one." Charles Victor Thompson spent 27 years on death row. He escaped once. He beat the system once. He had supporters, documentaries, and fans who believed in him. But here's what I keep coming back. Dennis Hayslip and Darren Kane didn't get 27 more years. They didn't get a last meal or final words or a chance to say goodbye. They were taken on an ordinary April night by a man who decided their lives were less important than his pride. That's the story. Not the escape, not the freight train, not the fake badge. 2 people who just wanted to live. If this story affected you, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Do you think justice was served after 28 years? Or did the system fail everyone involved? I'll see you in the next one.